pressure. When asked in a nationally televised interview whether he would disavow the support of David Duke, a former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, Trump wouldn't do it. And only later, again, under mounting pressure, did he backtrack.
When they talk about super predators, they almost always meant young African American kids. And so here is Hillary Clinton talking about what should be done with them.
Not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel.
Was it racially used, that term? Yes, it most certainly was. It was used.
Not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel. Not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel.
So when they were talking about this, it was almost completely used for African American kids. If you think this is the family that was so great to African Americans, that's one opinion, but you just heard her yourself. Your call. Young Turks.
They take our future. We take their life. They take our future. We take their life.
The KKK endorses Hillary Clinton. We have given her $20,000 anonymously for her campaign fund. She is friends with the Klan. You know, a lot of people don't realize that. What, all this stuff she's saying now, she's saying so she can get into office, okay? She doesn't care about illegal immigrants. She doesn't. She's acting like she does so she can get into office. And once she's into the office, then she'll implement her policies. She's Democrat. The Klan has always been a democratic organization. I could care less about Donald Trump. He's a millionaire. He's a businessman. He's not a politician. He couldn't run this country more than he can run a county. For the KKK, Hillary Clinton is our choice.
Little mention of Byrd's once deep hatred for African Americans. Also barely mentioned the time served in the Ku Klux Klan. Senator Byrd wasn't just a member of the KKK. He was a Klan leader, holding the titles of Kleagle and Exalted Cyclops. The senator claimed to have left the organization in 1943, but later wrote a letter to the group's Grand Wizard saying, quote, "The Klan is needed today as never before, and I am anxious to see its rebirth here in West Virginia," end quote. As recently as 2005, in his memoir, Byrd describes the KKK as a fraternal assembly of, quote, "upstanding people," end quote. He was the only senator to vote against both African-American Supreme Court nominees, Thurgood Marshall and Clarence Thomas. He personally filibustered the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964. He opposed President Truman's initiative to integrate the armed forces, and he said he would never fight, quote, "with a Negro by my side. Rather, I should die 1,000 times than to see this beloved land become degraded by race mongrels," end quote. He once called Martin Luther King a, quote, "self-seeking rabble-rouser," and even told the FBI he could give a speech condemning King on the floor of the Senate, saying it was time the civil rights leader, quote, "met his Waterloo." He also once said the writers of the Declaration of Independence did not intend for the words, "all men are created equal," to be taken literally.
My name is Robert C. Byrd. This is my Constitution.
It's time to protect the next generation. In 1939, Margaret Sanger, co-founder of Planned Parenthood, started the Negro Project with the aim of slowing and then reversing the growth of the black population.
I've been against Hyde for years because I think it deprives low-income women from being able to access the full range of reproductive health services. And I don't think that's fair or appropriate.
A staunch advocate of eugenics, the so-called science of purifying the human gene pool, Sanger viewed certain races, especially blacks, as genetically inferior and inclined towards producing human weeds.
It's great to be back in Houston with so many friends and to have an opportunity to participate in the Planned Parenthood annual meeting.
I would want to do more to, number one, expand the services that Planned Parenthood provides. I'm obviously not only against defunding Planned Parenthood, but I would like to see Planned Parenthood even get more funding because oftentimes it is both the first and the last resort. I've spent my life fighting for children, families, and our country, and I'm not stopping now. So we will have to do whatever we can to provide access to quality, affordable health care that includes the full range of reproductive health, including safe and legal abortion.
I have to tell you that it was a great privilege when I was told that I would receive this award. I admire Margaret Sanger enormously. Her courage, her tenacity, her vision.
Reckless breeders spawning human beings who never should have been born.
Her. And there are a lot of lessons that we can learn from her life and from the cause she launched and fought for and sacrificed so greatly.
Sanger's strategies, still followed by Planned Parenthood today, involve recruiting so-called progressive black leaders who are persuaded that slowing back birth rates was a key to their people's future success and prosperity. A profoundly disproportionate number of abortion clinics were placed near the inner cities. And since then, an equally disproportionate number of our African American population, more than 15 million, has been weeded out by abortion.
I'm proud to have the Planned Parenthood support because they're going to have to be one of my partners at the table trying to figure this out.
And so it was President Bill Clinton who escalated the drug war far beyond what his Republican predecessors even dreamed possible. And it was President Clinton that championed laws denying federal financial aid to drug offenders for college. It was President Clinton who championed laws banning people with criminal convictions from access to public housing so that people wouldn't have housing upon release from prison. It was the Clinton administration that championed laws denying even food stamps under federal law to people who were once caught with drugs. To a large extent, the basic architecture of this new caste system was championed by a Democratic administration desperate to win back the so-called white swing voters, the folks who had defected from the Democratic Party in the wake of the civil rights movement.
Much, Anderson. As a black man in America, if I were born today, I'd have a 1 in 3 chance of ending up in prison in my life. Secretary Clinton, on the campaign trail, you are calling for an end to the era of mass incarceration. But a lot of folks in the black community blame the 1994 crime bill, a bill you supported, for locking up a generation of black men. Given what's happened since 1994, why should black people trust you to get it right this time?
Well, Don, let me say this. Senator Sanders voted for that bill. We both supported it. And I think it's fair to say we did, because back then there was an outcry over the rising crime rate. And people from all communities were asking that action be taken. Now, my husband said at the NAACP last summer that it solved some problems, but it created other problems, and I agree. And one of those problems was, unfortunately, a move to expand the reasons why people would be incarcerated, not just at the federal level, which was what this bill was about, but in states and localities as well. And that's why the very first speech that I gave in this campaign was about criminal justice reform and ending the era of mass incarceration, because I believe absolutely that too many families were broken up, too many communities were adversely affected. So we've got to do a bunch of things. On the criminal justice side, look, we've got to have better policing. That means body cameras. That means ending profiling. That means doing everything we can to make sure there's respect between the community and the police. And when it comes to incarceration,
Secretary.
Senator Byrd was a man of surpassing eloquence and nobility.
In 1964, incidentally, a year that 3 of our civil rights workers were killed in Mississippi registering blacks to vote, was also the year that civil rights legislation, historic civil rights legislation, was being promoted, and President Johnson wanted to sign it, but nevertheless it was held up, bottled up in the United States Senate by Southern Democrats. And one Democrat in particular, who was the last individual to try to obstruct this legislation, was a guy named Senator Robert Byrd of West Virginia, who for 14 hours and 13 minutes held a filibuster against this civil rights legislation.
Senator Robert Byrd used the nigger word 3 times on a national televised TV show. No outcry at all. Nobody said a thing, at least from the Democrat. No, the Black Caucus didn't say anything, the NAACP, no outcry.
There's no price to pay when you're on the left and you make intemperate racial remarks. There's no price to pay. We say, well, it's just, we're making much to do about nothing.
I will never forget his devotion and his friendship in that critical time. It is almost impossible to imagine the United States Senate without Robert Byrd. He was not just its longest serving member, he was its heart, its soul, and its historian.
I admire Margaret Sanger enormously. Her courage, her tenacity, her vision. I am really in awe of her.
She believed that white people were superior to other races. And she, like the Nazis, believed that certain races were inferior to others and that we need to encourage those people not to reproduce so that we can just have the good people reproduce and the fittest and the strongest people reproduce.
So innovation, birth control, and abortion.
She started an organization called the Birth Control Federation of America. And do you know what the Birth Control Federation of America later changed its name to? Planned Parenthood. Okay, Planned Parenthood, that wicked organization that conservatives rail against for being pro-abortion and pro-death, was actually originally known as the Birth Control Federation of America. So you can see the type of evil people that are behind this agenda. She's the one who pushed this through and got it legal in the United States.
Do you believe there is such a thing as sin?
Well, I think the greatest sin in the world is bringing children into the world that have disease from their parents, that have no chance in the world to be a human being, practically. Delinquents, prisoners, all sorts of things just marked when they're born. That, to me, is the greatest sin.
From the years 1882 to 1968, 3,000, well roughly, those that were recorded, 3,446 of us were lynched in the United States. That number, 3,446, is surpassed in less than 3 days by abortion. See, it took that long to lynch that many black people, but that number is surpassed in 3 days. It's time to wake up.
Very accomplished woman. This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. The President of the United States is racist. A lot of us already knew that. Today, President Trump, talking with lawmakers in the Oval Office about immigrants from Haiti, from El Salvador, and Africa, said, and I quote, "Why are we having all these people from shithole countries come here?" But you know who he did say he would welcome here? He said the U.S. should bring in more people from countries like Norway. The man who based his entire political career for years on the racist birther lie that President Barack Obama was born in Africa, a man who reportedly still believes that to this day. So, John Fredericks, the reality is that these racist, xenophobic views are one of the most consistent opinions that this president has.
Well, Don, it's not about race, as you like to make it, because that's easy and lazy. It's about economics. My comment back to Maria is your children are going to have a much better economic future and a better chance for a good job. It's about economics. My comment back to Maria is your children are going to have a much better economic future and a better chance for a good job than they would have had under another president. Now, let me, you called on me, so let me finish. Truer words, minus
you know what, John Fredericks?
Have never been said
John
in the Oval
Fredericks?
Office.
John, until that last comment,
I'm
going to cut you off. Can we please cut him off? Can we take him off the screen? Can we get rid of John Fredericks? Thank you. First of all, I was going to let him speak until you doubly insulted me. I don't even need to respond to the lazy comment. I laid it all out in the thing. We can have this conversation, and we don't need someone who's going to make excuses for racism.
Apologize.
Do you think President Trump is a racist?
You know, it's a common fact of human experience that a person who makes repeated racist statements is a racist.
So you think he's a racist?
Absolutely.
House Speaker Paul Ryan?
For years, I and others have been trying to tell you, the American people, that this man was exhibiting bigoted behavior. I asked him about it a number of times, and he denied it, but kept up the racist rhetoric and behavior throughout the campaign and now while he's in the White House. Of this. But he is a racist. And for all of you who over the last few years have uttered that tired, lazy, uninformed, uneducated, ignorant response of calling me and others who point out racist behavior racist, what does it say about you that no matter what, you continue to make excuses for this man, for his vile behavior, this sort of vile behavior? Doesn't that make you just as bad, if not worse, than him? So why are you mad if someone calls you a racist if you know you're not one? Think about that. If you know you're not a racist, then why are you mad about it when someone calls out racism? What does that say about you?
With all due respect, that's racist. Please stop doing that. I'm on Indian Affairs. This is completely unacceptable. You really should stop doing this. It doesn't serve anybody. Something like that.
Under a Trump administration, it's going to be America first. America first. And by the way, that is the most beautiful little girl. Hi, honey. What a beautiful, look how beautiful. Hi. You want to come up and see me? Huh? You want to come up? Come on. Most beautiful little girl. Wow. Come on, bring her. So beautiful. What's your name? What? Oh, that's, say it.
My name's Salamnish.
And do you know that where are your parents? Where are your parents? Wow, congratulations. What a job. What a beautiful person you are. Thank you, honey. Come
here. And why I'm voting for Donald Trump? Because he's going to handle illegal immigration. We need him to build that wall. He also puts American workers first. It's about time America had a president that put the American people first, not refugees and illegal immigrants. Vote for Trump.
We have been devastated. We have been devastated with the lack of jobs, with immigration. We have been run over. Donald Trump is our new future. Donald Trump is our hope. Donald Trump is also bringing us together, regardless of the color of our skin, as American citizens. That's the only way we can get back in order, is if we stand together. This present administration is not working in the favor of American citizens. They're destroying the Constitution. They're tearing this country down. We need somebody that's going to be strong, stand as a man, and help us recognize and put the Constitution and illustrate the Constitution, what it was written for. And Donald Trump is the person. He's going to make America great again, regardless of the color of your skin.
Y'all want America great. Every last one of y'all need to go out there and fight for Donald Trump.
I'm voting Donald Trump for President of the United States. It is time for real change. We need to secure our borders. We need to bring jobs back to our country. We need to put Americans first. It is time to make America great again.
I voted for Barack Obama when he said he was going to bring hope and change. And yes, we can. And no, we didn't. The jobs didn't come. The better schools didn't come. The investment in our communities did not come. National security, our borders are open. We're not safe. We're not safe. And we've got to stop thinking as black and white and purple and Arab. We've got to start thinking as Americans. And that's what Donald Trump is saying. We're Americans. America first.
Trump calls us faith.
I'm Leo Dunson, and this is why I'm supporting Donald Trump for president. We need a businessman to bring jobs to the middle class. We need a commander-in-chief who's willing to destroy ISIS and strengthen our military and also protect the homeland. We need a master negotiator to renegotiate our trade deals with foreign countries so that America comes first and not some globalist agenda. And most importantly, we need someone that's going to make America great again. All that and much more is why I'm supporting Donald Trump for president.
He wants to put Americans first over illegal immigrants and our vets first over illegal immigrants. I don't think that makes me a bigot or racist or deplorable because I support those who served our country and lost their lives to support us and to protect us.
I want dreamers to come from the United States. I want the people in the United States that have children. I want them to have dreams also. We're always talking about dreamers for other people. I want the children that are growing up in the United States to be dreamers also. They're not dreaming right now.
I'm asking for the vote of every African American citizen struggling in our country today who wants a different and much better future. It's time for our society to address some honest and very, very difficult truths. The Democratic Party has failed and betrayed the African American community. Democratic crime policies, education policies, and economic policies have produced only more crime, more broken homes, and more poverty. To every voter living in the inner city or every forgotten stretch of our society, I'm running to offer you a much better future, a much better job. And it's time to rebuild the inner cities of America and to reject the failed leadership of a rigged political system. I'm running to listen to your voice. To every parent who dreams for their children, and to every child who dreams for their future, I say these words to you tonight. I'm with you. I will fight for you. And I will win for you. Together, we will make America strong again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again, greater than ever before. Thank you and God bless you.
So sounding off on the president's job performance. Just shy of 1 year in, is he living up to their expectations? Here's CNN's Martin Savage in Youngstown.
1 year later, these voters couldn't be happier. They see achievement. Most of all, they see a president like them.
He's like tenacious sometimes and says stuff off the cuff like we do, like real Americans do. You know, we're not perfect. I'm tired of suave. I'm tired of polished. I'm tired of the teleprompter. You know, I am. I want my country back.
Martin Savage, CNN, Youngstown, Ohio.
Different desires and different career paths. If you say that African Americans commit a disproportionate amount of violent crimes, if you say that Muslims commit a disproportionate amount of terrorism, suddenly they rear back and they start to call you a bigot. They start to say you're racist or sexist or Islamophobic or whatever, until the statement of simple data, things that are just factually true, become unexpressible. You're not allowed to say them. And I don't think conservatives fully appreciate the power of that kind of of mental slavery. I mean, if you turn on CNN over the weekend after his remarks about Haiti and African countries, every one of their anchormen was crying, you know, their little trembly lips and the misty eyes, because it was so intolerable to them that Donald Trump was not restrained by their definition of what's cruel and their definition of what's impolite. This is a network where Anderson Cooper called ordinary right-wing Americans, he called them teabaggers. And now when Haiti is insulted, suddenly Anderson, his lip is trembling and his eyes are all misty. It's a form of bullying. It's simply a form of social bullying. And I'm grateful for Donald Trump for shattering that, even when he does it in ways that I find kind of appalling.
Whether or not the President of the United States is a racist, as he himself had to come out over the weekend, or chose to, and said, I am not a racist. What do you make of where we are?
Well, obviously I'm biased, sir. I've been with him since the beginning, him coming down that escalator. But, you know, there's something, you know, earlier when you had Ms. Alveda King speaking earlier, something that kind of touched my heart, that I actually was a witness myself at 2015 at Trump Tower in front of 110 pastors on the 26th floor with that time candidate Trump at the time. And he spoke in the front. He says, you know, one of the things that when I become president, I'm going to protect the pastor's ability to speak out of the pulpit without any government coming in and overreaching. So for a comment to say, for Congressman John Lewis to say respectfully that, you know, I don't agree, I don't think Dr. King would agree with President Trump is totally an unfair statement, because when you have a POTUS in office that we have here that has fought to lower taxes to put more money in my pocket as well as my employees' pocket, when you put a POTUS in office that defends the right for pastors who look like me and Congressman John Lewis to protect those pulpits, you know, how can you say something like that? How can a man of 40 years out in the public eye, traveled all over the world, not one person go through 17 candidates in the primary, through a vicious general, and not one soul can come up and validate any of this statement that he's a racist?
Now, if someone...
this is totally crazy.
If someone...
One thing about this president, when he promised Israel Jerusalem would be the capital, he delivered. When he promised tax cuts, he delivered. When he promised that he'll get a lower African-American unemployment, which is the lowest in the history of the United States, sir, and climbing. When I sat in that limo with him from Dobbins Air Force Base with Alveda King, and we had a half-hour conversation, and he was so elated the fact that that was just totally diminishing, and his plan was to go out and to work with small banks and get more banking back for access to capital for people who look like me and African-American community. This came out of the president's mouth. So for John Lewis needs to take care of District 5. Maxine Waters needs to take care of their district.
Donald Trump wasn't the only one making questionable statements tonight. Listen to Secretary Clinton at a fundraiser here in New York.
Be grossly generalistic. You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right? The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it.
And it got to a point where I really didn't even want to look too much during the speech over to that side, because honestly, it was bad energy. No, it was bad energy. You're up there. You've got half the room going totally crazy, wild. They loved everything. They want to do something great for our country. And you have the other side, even on positive news, really positive news like that, they were like death and un-American. Un-American. Somebody said treasonous. I mean, yeah, I guess why not? You know, can we call that treason? Why not? I mean, they certainly didn't seem to love our country very much. But somebody said treasonous. I mean, yeah, I guess why not? You know, can we call that treason? Why not? I mean, they certainly didn't seem to love our country very much. But
first of all, there isn't an issue.
when I was in public service serving as the senator from New York, I did stand up to the banks. I did make it clear that their behavior would not be excused. I'm the only one on this stage who did not vote to deregulate swaps and derivatives as Senator Sanders did, which led to a lot of the problems that we had with Lehman Brothers. Now, if you're going to look at the problems that actually caused the Great Recession, you got to look at the whole picture. It was a giant insurance company, AIG. It was an investment bank, Lehman Brothers. It was mortgage companies like Countrywide. I'm not saying that Senator Sanders did something untoward when he voted to deregulate swaps and derivatives. Well, the fact is, he did. And that contributed to the collapse of Lehman Brothers, which started a cascade in the Great Recession. An issue. When I was in public service serving as the senator from New York, I did stand up to the banks. I did make it clear that their behavior would not be excused. I'm the only one on the stage who did not vote to deregulate swaps and derivatives as Senator Sanders did, which led to a lot of the problems that we had with Lehman Brothers. Now, if you're going to look at the problems that actually caused the Great Recession, you got to look at the whole picture. It was a giant insurance company, AIG. It was an investment bank, Lehman Brothers. It was mortgage companies like Countrywide. I'm not saying that Senator Sanders did something untoward when he voted to deregulate swaps and derivatives. Well, the fact is, he did, and that contributed to the collapse of Lehman Brothers, which started a cascade